Okay, cool. So thank you to the organizers, and I'm happy to be here to share what I think is probably a slightly oddball perspective that we'll cover a range of a couple topics. But just to be a little bit formal, my name is Brian Boyer, and I'm design lead at Citra, which is the Finnish Innovation Fund. We are an independent government fund, so basically a sovereign wealth fund that has think tank activities. This is a very odd place for a designer to be working, but a really great place in a lot of ways because we are able to do all sorts of things that typically designers aren't able to do. These include engaging very directly with government at the national and municipal scale to help them work through problems, as well as demonstrating what those solutions mean at scale. So to give you an example of that, currently we're working on a 25,000 square meter urban block in central Helsinki. That's a 60 million euro project that's being driven by a design-led approach to collaboration, basically, a way to integrate different forms of knowledge and expertise to essentially understand the problem space of low-carbon development in a fundamentally, you could say, more comprehensive way. So one of the challenges that we deal with as designers who are working on these problems is that we like to think of the world as having undo, but actually the material world doesn't. So often I think as contemporary citizens we're sort of seduced by the mythology of smooth capital, but you know what? It's pretty much bullshit. It has a dramatic effect on the way that we live our lives, but so does matter. And in fact, matter can be a real pain in the butt. So somehow we've tricked ourselves into believing that we have undo everywhere, not just on our computers. And now we're sort of trying to step back from that. One of the symptoms of that is a belief that we could separate analysis and execution. So if we look at the way certainly management styles have moved, but even in governance, there's a belief that you can hire somebody to do the analysis to figure out what needs to be done and somebody else to do the execution. And that separation is extremely problematic because there's a kind of expertise that comes in the doing. So to have thinking by one party and doing by another party basically reduces the linkages and eliminates opportunities for useful coevolution of both of those. And so this is where we see design, a new role for design as linking the thinking and the doing and operating on the hinge between those two. Again, as a kind of facilitator or integrator, not as owning the entire package. That being said, that's more or less a pitch for the work that we're doing at Citra, and I'm going to leave this behind because I think that there's probably there's a better contribution I can make to today's conversation, which is really as an advocate of matter. And so I'll get biographical for a second. This is where I grew up. It's a farm in Central California. So I have a very direct relationship with matter. We harvest every year a couple hundred tons of walnuts from the farm. So it's something that's very close to me. I'm also a practicing architect, which means that matter and material are things that I struggle with, literally. The reality is that for the most part, designers or architects, and this is a professional failing of our own industry, are brought in too late. So by the time anybody who's a client hires a designer, that client has already made decisions which are bracketing the possibilities of that collaboration in a significant manner. And when, as a society, we don't have a good understanding of the consequences of matter, this becomes extremely problematic. So, for instance, when somebody comes to you and says, we want an 8-story building that is glass and steel. Well, why do you want a glass building?